Christmas Eve. I woke in an empty house. My family snuck off on a luxury trip. Without me, I didn't cry, I acted. 5 days later, they returned and started screaming when the door opened. I woke up to silence. Not noise, not voices, just silence. So thick that it pressed on my eardrums. It was December 24th, the morning before Christmas, and there was not a sound in the house. I lay under the blanket for another 5 minutes, listening. Usually at this time of day, my mother would be scurrying through the hallways, loudly commenting on her every step. My father would be rustling newspapers in the kitchen. Lawrence would be stomping up the stairs, and Margaret would be chattering away on her phone. But now, nothing, only silence. I went downstairs in my bathrobe. The kitchen was empty. The living room was empty. No suitcases by the door. No coats on the hangers. On the kitchen table lay a piece of paper torn from my mother's notebook. I picked it up and read it. "We left early, don't wait." No explanation, no sorry or see you later. Just don't wait. I stood in the middle of the kitchen with this piece of paper in my hands and felt something inside me harden, shrinking into a small, cold stone. They left. To Switzerland. Without me, they didn't even leave a text message to warn me, let alone wake me up. They knew that I was sensitive to electronic notifications even in my sleep. My hand clenched the piece of paper tightly. My mother sponsored this trip. A luxury hotel in Zurich, 5 nights, a New Year's Eve party, in a restaurant on top of a mountain. She talked about it all November, showed photos of the rooms, discussed what they would take with them. I listened and nodded, although deep down I knew something would go wrong. Things always go wrong when it comes to me. But I didn't think they would just leave without me, without a word, without an explanation. I sat down at the table and looked at the note again. Left early. As if I was late, as if I didn't make it in time. But I was here. I wasn't going anywhere else. They just left me. I was 29 years old. I was a senior programmer at a company that developed software for medical institutions. I earned as much as my mother in her position as director. I lived in this house because it was more convenient. Lots of space, a separate room with 2 monitors, fast internet, and because my mother insisted. "Why would you rent something when there's enough room here?" she said. But in reality, she wanted to keep me under control. She always did. My mother got pregnant with me at 17, young, stupid, in love with a boy who was also stupid and young. Christopher Millstone, my father, was 18 when my mother told him she was pregnant. She made him marry her. She made him go to work. She built her life through iron will and cruelty, which I saw every day. She had 2 more children, Lawrence and Margaret. Lawrence came 5 years after me, Margaret 10 years after that. They were both perfect children, obedient, submissive, ready to fulfill their mother's every whim. Lawrence went to work for her in her office right after college, even though he has a degree in marketing, and he works there as an organizational assistant. That is, he does whatever his mother tells him to do. Margaret is still in school, but she already says she wants to become a businesswoman like her mother. I was different. I didn't want to obey. I went into programming because my mother said it was not a woman's job. She wanted me to become a lawyer or a manager, to come work for her, to sit under her wing and follow her orders. But I refused, and she hated me for it. At first, she laughed. When I said I was going to study to be a programmer, she rolled her eyes and said, "Well, let her try. She'll come running back in a year." But I didn't come running back. I finished the course, found a job, and started earning money. And when I got my second raise 3 years later, my mother stopped laughing. She started to get annoyed. There were other things, little things that had been building up for years. When I turned 22, they forgot my birthday. They just forgot. No one was home when I came home from work. I thought they were running late, that they were preparing a surprise. But no, in the evening, they came back from some meeting, and my mother didn't even mention the date. 2 weeks later, they threw a party for Lawrence at a restaurant. They invited his friends, colleagues, even distant relatives. My mother stood next to him and smiled as if he had just won the Nobel Prize. When I graduated from university, my mother fell ill and didn't come to the graduation ceremony. She suddenly had a headache, even though the night before she had been happily discussing Lawrence's university with him. My father came alone and stood to one side, awkwardly shifting from foot to foot. He didn't know what to say. Neither did I. We just stood there in silence while other families took pictures, hugged, and laughed. But the whole family came to Margaret's school play, where she played a tree in a production about autumn. Mom sat in the front row, applauding after every scene, even though Margaret just stood on stage and moved her paper branches. After the performance, Mom gave the administration a piece of her mind for not giving Margaret one of the leading roles. She didn't yell or wave her arms around, but she threatened complaints and punishment, and she didn't stop until she got what she wanted, although not immediately and not on the same day. Last Christmas, we took a family photo. I was standing to the side near the Christmas tree. When the photo was printed, I wasn't in it. My mother said that the photographer had accidentally cropped the frame. She hung the photo in a frame in the hallway. Every time I walked past, I saw them all, smiling, happy, without me. I endured. Thus, I told myself that these were trifles, that they weren't that important, that I was strong and could live with it. But now, sitting in the kitchen with this note in my hands, I realized that I didn't want to endure it anymore. I got up, went to my room, and opened my laptop. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed the query into the search engine. I found the number of a design studio that a colleague had once recommended. I dialed. Within 10 seconds, the girl on the other end of the line answered cheerfully, "Arcana Studio, how can I help you?" "I need a complete interior redesign of my house," I said calmly. "In 5 days. Money is not a problem." She paused for a moment, then cautiously asked, "What are the dimensions of the house?" I gave her the square footage. She paused again, then said she would transfer me to the senior manager. A few minutes later, I was talking to a woman with a deep voice. "5 days is very little time," she said. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. And I need a specific style. Dark Gothic, black walls, red accents, decor that looks unusual." The woman fell silent again. "You mean something like—" "Yes," I interrupted. "Exactly that, but everything has to be legal, nothing illegal, just impressive." "Understood. We can meet tonight to discuss the details." I gave her the address. Then I called the furniture makers, then the technicians who install surveillance cameras. I spent the whole day on the phone, explaining, coordinating, and I didn't call my mother once. My phone vibrated several times. My mother was writing something about the hotel, about the snow, about how Margaret was delighted with the mountains. I didn't answer. In the evening, the designer came to see me, a young woman with bright red hair and tattoos on her arms. She looked around the house, walked through the rooms, took notes, and photographed the corners. Then she sat down at the table, quickly sketched some ideas, and showed them to me. "It's going to be incredible," she said, "and awful. Will your relatives like it?" "No," I replied. "That's why I'm doing it." She smiled. She didn't judge me. She didn't ask for details. She just nodded and said, "Then let's start tomorrow morning. The team will be here at 9. That's why I decided to choose them. The next morning, I left home. I booked a hotel room in a nearby town. Small but comfortable, with decent internet and quiet neighbors. For the next 5 days, I worked remotely, answering emails, writing code, participating in video calls. Everything was as usual. None of my colleagues suspected that anything was wrong. And in the evening, I watched as workers transformed our home into something else. Black paint on the walls, red skull-shaped candlesticks, mirrors in black frames with carved edges, upside-down crosses as decorative elements, Gothic-style furniture, carved, dark, massive, with sharp corners, carpets, with strange patterns resembling pentagrams. Everything was legal. Everything was within the law. but it looked as if a cult had settled in the house, about to begin a bloody sacrifice. I installed cameras everywhere. In the living room, in the hallway, in the kitchen, even in the bedrooms. I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to hear their voices. I wanted to know what they would feel. On December 29th, they returned. I sat in a hotel room with my laptop on my lap and stared at the screen. The camera at the front door showed a taxi pulling up. My father, mother, Lawrence, and Margaret get out. They look radiant, satisfied, tired after the trip. My mother is carrying a bag with the logo of some Swiss clothing brand. Lawrence is pulling suitcases. Margaret is chattering away, smiling, waving her phone, probably showing photos. Father unlocks the door with a key, and they go inside. The first few seconds are silent. They just stand in the hallway looking around. Then Mother's mouth drops open. Father freezes in place, the suitcases falling from his hands. Lawrence drops his suitcase, which thuds to the floor. Margaret squeals, pressing her hands to her mouth. Mother slowly turns her head, looking at the black walls, the candlesticks, the upside-down crosses. Her face turns white. She takes a step forward, then another. Her hands are shaking. She approaches the wall and touches it with her palm, as if she can't believe it's real. What has that bastard done? She exclaims, her voice echoing through the speakers of my laptop. Lawrence enters the living room. I see him looking at the new furniture, the pentagram rug, the candlesticks. He takes out his phone and starts filming. Margaret stands by the door and cries. My father just stands silently, staring at the floor. I smile and lean back in my chair. The fun was just beginning. I watched them for another hour. Mom rushed around the rooms, touching the walls, furniture, candlesticks, as if trying to convince herself that this wasn't real. Dad sat on the new black leather sofa with his head bowed. Margaret hid in her room. I could see through the camera how she was lying on her black bed, staring at the black ceiling. And Lawrence walked around the house with his phone, filming everything. I waited. I knew the call would come, and finally, he stopped making me wait. The phone rang at 9 in the evening. It was my mother's number. I looked at the screen and felt my heart race, but my voice remained calm when I answered, "Hello? What have you done?" My mother's voice was quiet, stifled, barely controlled. "Clara, what the hell have you done?" "I redecorated," I replied. "I thought it was time for a change." "A change?" She was almost shouting now. "You've turned our home into some kind of horrible—" "What exactly?" I interrupted. "What have I turned the house into, Mom? Tell me exactly." She fell silent. I could hear her breathing. Heavy, nervous. "It's illegal," she finally said. "You have no right." "I do," I replied calmly. "I live in this house. I have the right to change the interior. There's nothing illegal about it. It's just the design. Dark Gothic style. You can check. Everything was bought in regular stores. No forbidden symbols, no violations." "Clara. And one more thing, Mom," I continued, not letting her interrupt. "Do you remember how Lawrence told me last year about how you got this house? About Christopher's aunt who died and left an inheritance? He was a little drunk at that family dinner. Do you remember? He said you fudged the paperwork because the aunt actually wanted to leave the house to her niece, but you convinced the notary that she had changed her mind before she died." Mom gasped. Suddenly I heard her trying to respond, but the words were stuck in her throat. "If you take me to court," I said quietly, "I'll tell everyone about it, and I'll ask them to check those documents. I wonder what they'll find." Silence. A long, heavy silence. Then my mother whispered, Are you blackmailing me?" "No," I replied. "I'm just reminding you that everyone has their secrets, and that sometimes it's better not to touch something that could explode." She hung up. I put the phone on the table and felt the tension slowly release from my shoulders. I did it. I told her everything. But through the cameras, I could see that Lawrence was still walking around the house with his phone. He was searching for something on the internet, reading, then filming again, and then he picked up his phone and dialed a number. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but 20 minutes later, a police car pulled up outside the house. 2 officers got out of the car, a man of about 45 and a young woman. Lawrence met them at the door. I turned up the volume on the camera in the hallway and heard his voice. "Thank you for coming. I don't know what it is, but something's wrong here. My sister did this while we were away, and I think it might be dangerous." "Dangerous?" the officer asked. "In what way?" "Well, see for yourselves." They went inside. I watched as the officers inspected the house. The man touched the wall, examined the candlesticks, picked one up, and turned it over in his hands. The woman approached the carpet with the pentagram, crouched down, and examined the pattern. "It's just decoration," she said finally. "Gothic style." Nothing illegal except perhaps the fact that changes were made to the house without the owner's consent. But Lawrence points to the upside-down cross. It's a religious symbol, the officer interrupts, standing up. "The cross of St. Peter. It's used in some denominations and nothing illegal." Lawrence is silent. Mom stands behind him, her arms crossed over her chest. His father is still sitting on the sofa. "Who is the owner of the house?" asks the female officer. "Me," says his mother. "Lily Millstone." "And you allowed your daughter to do this renovation?" His mother presses her lips together. She can't say no, because then she'll have to explain why her daughter has access to the house and the right to change things. She can't say yes, because it would look like she approved of this horror. "It's a complicated situation," she finally says. "I understand." The officer puts the candlestick back in its place. "There's nothing illegal about the interior itself, although I agree it looks impressive. But if you want to file a report about illegal alterations to the house without—" "No!" the mother snaps at the police officers, and when they almost reflexively recoil, she adds a little more quietly, "No, this is a family matter. I ask you to leave our home. Immediately." They finally leave, turning around and arguing about something. But they leave. Lawrence stands in the middle of the hallway, confused and angry. Mom looks at him with such hatred as if he had just betrayed her. "You're an idiot," she hisses. "Did you call the police? Do you want all the neighbors talking about this for a year? I thought you didn't think. You never think." She goes upstairs, stomping her feet. Dad finally gets up from the couch and says quietly, "Lawrence, go to bed." Lawrence doesn't move. Then he picks up the phone and goes outside. I see through the camera at the entrance how he stands on the porch, dialing someone's number. He talks for 5 minutes, gesturing nervously. Then he returns to the house and goes to his room. I turn off the cameras for the night and go to bed. I smile in the dark. The police came. The neighbors saw them. That's even better than I planned. A week has passed. Rumors spread, as I knew they would, but nothing more came of it. So the next morning, I woke up, made coffee, and opened my laptop. I checked my email. A few work emails, nothing urgent. Although there was something interesting. One email was from an address I didn't recognize, so I clicked on it with curiosity, and I saw the headline: "Financial Irregularities at Meridian Solutions. Employee files complaint against management." I clicked on the link to the article. I read slowly, savoring every word more and more. Dean Verberg, a middle manager at Meridian Solutions, has filed a formal complaint with the finance department and internal audit. According to him, the director of the operations department, Lily Millstone, systematically used corporate funds for personal needs. In particular, a recent trip to Switzerland, which was declared as a business meeting with potential partners, was in fact a family vacation. Verberg provided copies of documents confirming his words. I leaned back in my chair. Dean Verberg, I remembered him. A short man of about 38, always wearing glasses, always quiet. Mom yelled at him in meetings. I saw it several times when I went into her office. She humiliated him, saying he was worthless, that he didn't know how to work, that he only kept his job because the company couldn't find a replacement for him. And that was even though he lived not far from our house. And now he had given up. I smiled. Revenge grows on its own. For several hours, I lived my quiet life, working and relaxing until the phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I answered cautiously. Yes? Clara Millstone? A man's voice, formal. Yes, it's me. My name is Harrison Turner. I'm your mother's lawyer. She asked me to contact you. I was silent. I waited. Your mother would like to discuss the situation. She believes that you have violated. I haven't violated anything, I interrupted. Everything is legal. If your client has a complaint, let her take it to court. But warn her that I have something to say too. The lawyer fell silent. Then, I'll pass on your words to her. Have a nice day. And he hung up. I put down the phone and looked again at the article about Dean Verberg. I wonder how much else he knows. How many more of my mother's secrets can he reveal? And who sent this letter? Was it him? In the evening, I turned on the cameras again. Mom was sitting in the kitchen with a glass of wine. She looked tired and aged. Dad was sitting next to her, staring silently at the table. Margaret didn't come out of her room. Lawrence was sitting in the living room with his laptop, reading something, frowning. Suddenly, Mom got up, walked over to Lawrence, and snatched the laptop out of his hands. What are you reading? Nothing. Just show me. She looked at the screen. I couldn't see what was there, but her face froze. Who sent this to you? No one. I found it myself. It's news, Mom. About the company, about you. She threw the laptop on the couch and grabbed her phone. She dialed a number and waited. Then she screamed, Dean, you bastard. How dare you? I didn't hear the answer, but I saw my mother shaking with rage. You'll regret this. I'll destroy you. You won't find a job anywhere, nowhere. She hung up and threw the phone on the table. Then she sat down and cried. My father came up to her, put his hand on her shoulder, but she pushed him away. Don't touch me. I turned off the cameras. I'd seen enough. I'd seen everything I wanted to see. The next day, when I checked my email, I found a letter from an unknown sender, the same one who had sent the previous letter. The subject line read, about your mother. I opened it carefully. Hello, Clara. We don't know each other, but I'm a colleague of your mother's. Dean Verberg, I heard about what happened to your house. Rumors spread quickly. I don't know if it was revenge or something else, but I want to say thank you. Your mother has been humiliating me and other people in the company for years. She thought she was untouchable, but now everything is changing. I have filed a complaint against her, and it seems that this is only the beginning. If you want to know more about what she has been doing, write to me. I have evidence. I reread the letter twice. Then I wrote a short reply. Thank you for now. What I have is enough, but I'll keep your offer in mind. I sent it and closed my laptop. The revenge had indeed grown bigger than I had planned, and I didn't even know if I wanted it to stop. It had been almost a month since I last saw that house. I rented an apartment in another part of town, a small one-bedroom on the 4th floor of an old brick building. The windows overlooked a quiet courtyard with trees. The neighbors weren't noisy, and the internet worked reliably. I bought a new desk, a chair, and set up my monitors. I worked as usual, coding, video conference meetings, corresponding with clients. None of my colleagues asked why I had suddenly moved out. I didn't tell anyone. I just went on living as if nothing had happened. But the phone wasn't always silent. Messages came in, mostly from Lawrence. Short, awkward attempts to reconnect. Clara, we need to talk. Mom is not herself. Please help. Why aren't you answering? I read them and deleted them. I didn't respond. I had nothing to talk to him about. My mother didn't write. That was to be expected. She never made the first move if she felt she had lost. And now she had definitely lost. Through acquaintances, through chance conversations, through news sites, I learned bits and pieces of what was happening. The scandal at the company was growing. Dean Verberg didn't just file a complaint. He gathered evidence. Years of evidence. Copies of receipts, corporate card statements, correspondence. My mother had used company money not only for her trip to Switzerland. She had paid for restaurants, clothes, even home repairs, all under the guise of entertainment expenses. The internal investigation had been going on for a week. My mother was called in for interviews with auditors, HR, and senior management. She was teetering on the brink of dismissal, but she was holding on for now. She knew how to play the game. She threatened lawsuits, hinted at discrimination, and used all her connections. But then something else happened. One evening, as I was sitting with a cup of tea and working on another project, I received a message from my mother's former colleague, a woman named Verona, whom I had met several times at corporate parties. "Clara, I don't know if I should tell you this, but your mother is in trouble. Dean Verberg didn't just talk about money. He also mentioned her relationship with Tobias Kellen in a conversation with HR. The man is married with 2 children. Tobias's wife found out. She came to the office yesterday. There was a scene." I reread the message twice. Tobias Kellen. I remembered him. A tall man of about 45, always in a suit, always smiling. My mother had mentioned him several times at home, saying that he was competent and understood business. Now everything was falling into place. I didn't reply to Veronica. I just put down my phone and continued working. It was no longer my business. My mother had dug herself into this hole. But the next evening, a message came from Margaret. "Clara, can I ask you something?" I hesitated. Margaret was writing to me for the first time in a while. I didn't know how to respond, but curiosity got the better of me. "Ask away." The reply came almost instantly. "Mom said you made it all up, that you did it from home to hurt her, that you're jealous, but I found photos on her phone. She was traveling with that man, Tobias, not just to Switzerland earlier, to Spain last summer. Does Dad know about this?" I stared at the screen, not knowing what to say. Margaret had always been Mom's favorite. She always believed her every word, and now she was asking questions. I didn't answer. It wasn't my place to dig into their relationship. But an hour later, another message arrived. "My father showed me the DNA test. I'm not his daughter." "Did you know?" My heart skipped a beat. I reread the sentence 3 times, trying to comprehend it. Margaret. Not his daughter. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I typed a reply, then deleted it. I typed again. "No, I didn't know. I'm sorry." I sent it and put my phone down. My hands were shaking. I got up, went to the window, and looked out at the yard, where the wind was swaying the branches of the trees. Margaret. 14 years old. Always been a mama's girl. Always listened. Always tried to be perfect. And now she found out that her father wasn't her father. The phone rang. Margaret. I picked up the receiver. "Hello? Clara?" Her voice was quiet, trembling. "I don't know what to do. Margaret." "Mom says it doesn't matter. That a father is the one who raises you, not the one who gave you your genes. But he doesn't even look at her now. He just sits in his room and doesn't say anything. And Lawrence, he took the test too. He and you are from Dad. But I'm not." She started crying. I stood by the window and didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to comfort her. I didn't know if I wanted to comfort anyone in this family. "Margaret," I finally said, "I'm sorry. I really am. But I can't help you. This is between you, Mom, and Dad. But you're my sister. Half," I corrected, "and I don't know how to live with that. Just like you." She sobbed a few more times, then said quietly, "Okay. Sorry for bothering you." She hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand and felt something inside me break. Margaret, a child who wasn't to blame for anything, who just wanted to be a good daughter, and now she found out that her whole family was a lie. The next day, I couldn't concentrate on work. I was writing code, but I kept getting distracted rereading that conversation with Margaret. In the evening, I decided to take a walk. I left the apartment, went to the park, and sat down on a bench. I watched children playing on the playground and couples walking along the paths. The phone rang, unknown number. I didn't want to answer, but something pushed me to. Hello? Clara? It was a male voice, familiar, but I couldn't identify it. Yes, who is this? Christopher, your father. I was silent. My father never called me himself. It was always through my mother or Lawrence, and his voice, I didn't recognize his voice. What's wrong? I finally asked. Can we meet? I need to talk to you. About what? About everything. About Mom, about Margaret, about what I should have said a long time ago. I fell silent, thinking. Part of me wanted to refuse, to say that I didn't care, that I didn't want to be part of their drama. But another part, the part that still remembered how my father had come to my graduation alone, how he had stood to the side and tried to smile even though he felt awkward, that part said, "Okay, where?" The coffee shop on the corner of Maplewood and 5th. Tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon, I'll be there. He hung up. I sat on the bench for another hour, watching the sun go down. Tomorrow, I'll meet my father. For the first time in all this time. For the first time in many years. Alone, without Mom, without Lawrence, without anyone. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop 5 minutes early. I ordered coffee and sat down at a table by the window. I waited. My father arrived at exactly 2 o'clock, wearing jeans and a sweater. Without the suit he always wore to work, he looked older than I remembered. Gray hairs at his temples, wrinkles around his eyes. He sat down across from me and ordered tea. We were silent for a couple of minutes while the waitress brought our orders. Then he said, "Thank you for coming. You said you needed to talk." "Yes." He looked into his cup, then at me. "I want you to know I'm not to blame for what happened. Not entirely." I didn't answer. I waited for him to continue. "Your mother, Lilia, she was always strong, too strong. When she got pregnant with you, I was 18. I didn't know what to do. My parents said I had to marry her, take responsibility, and I did. But Lilia, she didn't just want me to be there. She wanted to control everything, my life, my work, our children. And you let her," I said quietly. He nodded. "Yes, I let her, because I was weak, because I didn't know how to resist. And then it became a habit. It was just easier to do what she said." "And Margaret?" I asked. "Did you know?" He fell silent. He stared into his cup for a long time. Then, "I suspected, but I didn't want to know for sure. Last week I took a test for myself to see if I had the right to be angry. And I'm angry, very angry, but not at Margaret. She's not to blame. I'm angry at Lily for what she did to our family, for lying, for letting her do it." He looked up and looked at me. "And I'm angry at myself for not protecting you, for letting her treat you the way she did. You deserved better, Clara." I felt something tighten in my throat. I didn't want to cry, not here, not now. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for saying that." He nodded. We sat there for another 10 minutes, silently drinking our drinks. Then he asked, "Are you coming back?" "Home? No? I understand." He paid for both cups and stood up. "If you need anything, if you want to talk, I'll always be here." "Okay." He left. I sat there for another hour, staring out the window. I felt that something had changed, something important, but I didn't know what. In the evening, when I returned to my apartment, I received a message from Margaret. "My father said he met with you. Thank you for coming. He rarely asks for anything." I smiled and replied, "You're welcome." Then I added, "If you want to talk, text me. I'm here." She replied with a heart emoji. I put my phone down and felt that maybe all was not lost. Maybe something could still be saved. But then my phone rang again. Lawrence. I hesitated, then answered. What? Clara, please help me. I got fired from my job. Mom says it's because of the scandal. Because of her. I don't know what to do. Can I stay with you for a few days? Just until I find something. I closed my eyes. I felt everything I had tried to rebuild starting to crumble again. No, Lawrence, I can't. But you were there. In Switzerland. You knew I had been left. And you didn't say anything. You didn't stand up for me. You just kept quiet. He fell silent too. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Me too, I replied. But that's not enough. I hung up. I put the phone on the table and stared at it, waiting for it to ring again. But it didn't. The next morning, I opened a news site and saw another article about my mother. Lily Millstone is stepping down as Director of Operations at Meridian Solutions following an internal investigation. The company is not commenting on the details, but sources report systematic violations of financial discipline. I closed the site. I felt relieved, and at the same time, empty. My mother had lost everything. My father had finally opened his eyes. Margaret had learned the truth. Lawrence was out of a job, and I sat in my small apartment alone, thinking, was it worth it? My phone vibrated again. A message from Dean Verberg. Clara, if you haven't heard, your mother was fired. I know this must be difficult for you, but I want you to know that she deserved it, and you have a right to your own life without her. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed a reply, thank you, and yes, I know. I sent it. I put my phone down. I thought, maybe my revenge had gone further than I had planned, but maybe that's how it should have been. A month passed. February brought cold weather and snow, which lay on the streets for several days, turning into gray slush. I looked at it from the window of my apartment, sipping my morning coffee, and felt a strange lightness, as if something heavy had finally let go of me. The scandal at my mother's company died down. She didn't lose her job after all. Management allowed her to stay, but on certain conditions. She would compensate for all the expenses she had used for personal needs, work under the close supervision of the finance department, and have every transaction double-checked. Mom agreed. Otherwise, she would have lost everything. The affair with Tobias Kellen ended quickly and painfully. His wife Joan found out about everything. Someone anonymously sent her photos from that trip to Spain that Margaret found on Mom's phone. Joan came to the office and made a scene. She screamed in the middle of the office, threw things, and threatened to take him to court. Tobias resigned the following week, of his own accord. As the official statement said, in reality, he was asked to leave quietly so as not to inflame the scandal even more. My father still lived in the same house, but not with my mother. He moved into the guest room on the second floor. Margaret told me this in one of her messages. She wrote to me once a week, briefly, cautiously, as if she was afraid I wouldn't reply. I always replied, not much, but enough for her to know I was there. They don't talk, she wrote. Dad comes home late. Mom sits in her room. Lawrence tries to pretend everything is fine, but he's angry too. He got fired from his job. I knew about Lawrence. He sent me several messages after that call when I turned him down. He wrote that he was sorry, that he wanted to make things right. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I wanted to say anything to him. My apartment was turning into a home. I bought a new sofa. Soft, beige, comfortable. I painted the walls in light colors. No black, no Gothic accents, just warmth and light. I put houseplants on the windowsill, a ficus, a sansevieria, a few succulents. They grew slowly, but they grew. It was calming. Work was going well. Now, I was working on a new project for a startup in Austin. A complex medical data management system, lots of details, lots of responsibility. The pay was pretty good. I saved enough to not worry about the next few months. For the first time in many years, I felt calm, real calm. But one evening, as I sat at my laptop making final edits to the code, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. The pizza I had ordered was supposed to arrive in an hour. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. Lawrence. He was standing in the hallway looking gloomy, his shoulders slumped, unshaven, wearing an old baggy jacket that I remembered from his college days. Dark circles under his eyes, unwashed hair. He looked terrible. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "What do you want?" He looked up. His eyes were red and tired. "Clara, can I stay here for a few days, just until I find something?" I looked at him for a long time. I felt something inside me harden. "No." He blinked, as if he didn't understand. "What?" "No," I repeated. "You can't." "But, Clara, I don't know where to go. My mom says she won't support me until I find a decent job. My dad gives my mom money as compensation for everything. I don't even have money for rent. You were there," I interrupted, "in Switzerland. You knew I was left behind, and you didn't say anything." He fell silent. He lowered his eyes. I thought Mom knew what she was doing. I didn't want to argue with her." "Of course you didn't," I said quietly, "because it's always easier to keep quiet. It's always easier to do what Mom says, even if it means leaving your sister at home for Christmas." "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I'm sorry." I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, "I'll say it too. I'm sorry, but that's not enough." I closed the door. I stood behind it, listening to him standing in the hallway. A minute later, I heard footsteps. He was leaving. I went back to my laptop, but I couldn't concentrate. Oh, my hands were shaking. I felt guilty. He's my brother. He's in trouble. I could have helped him. But at the same time, I felt relieved. I said no. I didn't let him use me. 3 days later, my mother called me for the first time in 2 months. I looked at the screen of my phone, at her name glowing there. My heart was pounding. I could have not answered. I could have just rejected the call and moved on with my life. But something pushed me to pick up the phone. "Hello? Clara." Her voice was cold, controlled, with a barely perceptible note of anger. "Are you happy now?" I didn't answer. I waited. "You destroyed this family," she continued. "Dad won't talk to me. Margaret hates me. Lawrence lost his job because of the scandal you started. I was almost fired. Everything I've built over the years is destroyed because of you." I listened, feeling the cold spread through my body. "I didn't destroy anything," I finally said. "I just stopped playing your game." "My game?" She laughed, but there was no joy in it. "You think this is a game? You think I did all this to hurt you?" "No," I replied calmly. "You did it to control everyone around you, so that everyone would do what you wanted. But I don't want that anymore." She fell silent. I could hear her breathing, heavy, tense. "You've always been cold," she said finally. "Even as a child. Even when I tried to raise you, you never listened. You never respected me." "You never gave me a reason to respect you," I replied. "You just wanted me to obey." She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for another 10 minutes, staring into space. I felt relieved, and at the same time, sad. She was my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, raised me, fed me, and now we can't even talk normally. The following week, life began to return to normal. I finished a project for a startup in Austin, received a bonus, and put some money aside. I started looking for new orders. I met up with friends, the few I had left after years of isolation in that family. I went to the movies, to coffee shops, walked in parks. I lived. But one evening, a message came from Margaret. "I want to talk. Not on the phone, in person. Can we meet?" I hesitated. Margaret was the only one in the family with whom I had any contact. But a face-to-face meeting was different. It meant opening another door that I was trying to close. But I replied, "Okay, where?" "The same coffee shop where you met with Dad. Tomorrow at 3? "I'll be there." The next day, I arrived at the cafe a few minutes early. I ordered a latte and sat down at a table by the window. I waited. Margaret arrived at 3 o'clock sharp, wearing jeans, a sweater, and a backpack. She looked older than her 14 years. Her face showed fatigue and restraint that hadn't been there before. She sat down across from me and ordered a hot chocolate. We were silent while the waitress brought our orders. Then Margaret looked at me and said, "Mom says you're cold and vindictive." I didn't answer. I waited for her to continue. "But I think," she continued, "you just stopped putting up with it, and I want to learn that too." "Yes?" I looked at her, feeling something tighten in my chest. Learn what? Not to put up with it, not to obey, not to do what Mom says just because she wants me to. She lowered her eyes, twirling the cup in her hands. "I always thought my mother was the strongest person in the world, that she knew how to live right, that I had to be like her. But now I see that she's just afraid of losing control, afraid that someone will say no to her." She looked up. "And you did. And I see that you're fine, that you're living without her, and I want that too." I didn't know what to say to Margaret. She's a child. She's 14. She still depends on her mother, her father, those who feed and clothe her. She can't just leave like I did. "Margaret," I said cautiously, "you're still young. You need to finish school, go to college." "I know," she interrupted. "I'm not leaving home. Not now, but I want to know that it's possible, that I can do it someday, that I'm not stuck there forever." I nodded. "You can. I promise." She smiled. For the first time in our entire conversation, small, timid, but genuine. "Thank you." We sat for another hour, talking about trivial things. School, her friends, what she wanted to study in college. She dreamed of becoming a doctor. Not a businesswoman like her mother, a doctor. I told her it was a wonderful dream. When we said goodbye, she hugged me. Quickly, awkwardly, but sincerely. I hugged her back. "If you need anything," I said, "write to me. I'll always answer." "Okay." She nodded. She left. I sat there for another 20 minutes, looking out the window at the people passing by. I thought about Margaret, about how she wanted to break free, about how she saw me as an example. Maybe all was not lost. Maybe something could still be saved. In the evening, when I got home, I received a message from an unknown number. "Hi, Clara. This is Dean Verberg. I don't know if you remember me. I'm the one who filed the complaint against your mother. I wanted to ask if you're free this week. I'd like to discuss an idea. It's a startup related to programming. I think you'll find it interesting." I reread the message twice. Dean Verberg, the man who ruined my mother's career, the man who made my plan for revenge grow much bigger than I had intended. I typed a reply. "Hi, yes, I remember. Interesting. When can we meet?" I sent it and put my phone away. I thought, life goes on. Even after everything that happened, even after the ruins that remained of my family, maybe that's a good thing. My phone vibrated again. Margaret. "Thanks for today. You have no idea how much I needed that." I smiled and replied, "Me too. Take care." I put my phone down and looked around my apartment. Bright, warm, peaceful, my home, my place. Without my mother, without her control, without the constant pressure. For the first time in 29 years, I felt free. But somewhere deep down, I knew it wasn't over yet. Something else had to happen, something that would finally close the circle. And I was ready. Spring came unnoticed. March replaced snow with rain. April brought the first green shoots on the trees, and May exploded with colors. Lilac bushes under the windows, yellow dandelions in the parks, a blue sky that finally stopped being gray. It had been 3 months since I last saw my mother. 3 months since she called and accused me of destroying the family. We hadn't spoken since. I didn't regret it. Life was getting back on track. I completed a big project for a startup in Austin, a complex system that took me almost 3 months of continuous work. The client was satisfied and paid me a bonus, a substantial amount which I immediately put into a deposit account. I started looking for new orders, but without rushing. For the first time in my life, I could afford not to grab every project that came my way. Margaret met with me several times a month. We went to coffee shops, walked in the park, talked about school, her dreams, the future. She told me how hard it was for her to live in a house where her parents didn't talk to each other, where her mother walked around with a stony face and Lawrence hid in his room. But she held on. She studied. "I want to move in with my grandmother as soon as I finish school," she said one day as we sat on a bench in the park. "My mother's mother. She lives in Portland. She says I can come whenever I want." "That's a good idea," I replied. "It will be easier for you there." "And you?" she asked. "Are you happy now?" I thought about it. Happy? I don't know, but I'm calm, I'm free, and that's a lot. "Yes," I said finally, "I'm happy." She smiled. "My father sent me a message once a week. Nothing important, just, 'How are you?' or 'How's work?' I replied briefly, 'Fine,' or 'Everything's okay.' We didn't talk about Mom, about what had happened, about the ruins that remained of our family. We just kept in touch. It was thin, barely perceptible, but it was there. Mom didn't get in touch. Neither did Lawrence. I didn't know how they were doing, and I didn't ask. Margaret sometimes mentioned them, that Lawrence had found a job, that Mom was still with the company, that they were living in the same house. But there were no details. And I didn't need them. One day, as I was sitting at my laptop answering work emails, the phone rang. An unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello? Clara Millstone?" A man's voice, a little uncertain. "Yes, it's me. My name is Dean Verberg. We've corresponded before. I'm the one who filed the complaint against your mother." I was silent, waiting for him to continue. "I wanted to apologize," he continued. "I didn't know it would hit your family so hard. I just was tired of her, of how she treated me and other people. But I didn't think it would escalate like this." I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "Don't apologize," I said. "You did me a favor." He paused for a moment, then laughed, briefly in surprise. "I didn't think you'd say that." "What did you expect me to say?" "I don't know. I thought you'd be angry or upset." "No, what?" I replied. "I'm satisfied. My mother deserved everything that happened to her." We talked for another 15 minutes. It turned out that Dean was also a programmer. He worked part-time at my mother's company while developing his own projects on the side. Now he has quit and is fully focused on his startup, a platform for managing small businesses, something like CRM, but simpler and cheaper. "I need someone who understands back-end," he said. "Someone reliable. I heard about you from colleagues." "They say you're one of the best." "That's flattering," I replied, "but I'm busy right now." "I understand. Think about it. If you change your mind, let me know. We could work well together." "Okay. I'll think about it." He thanked me and hung up. I put down the phone and thought about it. A startup, a new job, new people. It could be interesting. But I wasn't sure I was ready. A week later, I went to the supermarket to buy groceries. I was pulling the cart past the produce section when I saw my father. He was standing by the tomato shelves, picking out the best ones, and he looked different, better. Shaven, wearing a clean shirt without the dark circles under his eyes that I remembered from our last meeting. "Dad?" I said, approaching him. He turned around, surprised, then smiled. "Clara." "Hi." "Hi." We stood between the shelves, awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Around us, people were pushing carts, children were screaming, and the speakers were playing something cheerful and meaningless. "How are you?" he finally asked. "Fine, I'm working. And you?" "Fine, too. Stable job. Nothing special." We were silent for a moment. Then he said, "I'm moving." I raised my eyebrows. Where? Renting an apartment, small, in another neighborhood, away from everything. From your mom, you mean? He nodded. Yes, from her. We're not together anymore. We're not officially divorced yet, but it's just a matter of time. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt relieved. My father had finally found the strength to leave. Another part felt sad. It was his family, his life that had fallen apart. I'm sorry, I said as he, Don't be. He shook his head. It should have happened a long time ago. I just didn't have the courage before. He looked at me, and there was something warm and sincere in his eyes. I'm proud of you, Clara. I've always been proud of you. I just didn't know how to show it. I felt something tighten in my throat. I know, I said quietly. He nodded, picked up a few tomatoes, and put them in his cart. If you want, we can meet up sometimes for coffee or lunch, just to talk. Okay, I replied. I'd like that. We said goodbye. He went to the checkout, and I continued on my way between the shelves. I felt a strange lightness. My father is leaving my mother. My father is finally making a choice. And maybe that means he'll be able to start a new life, too. In the evening, when I came home with my groceries, I took out my phone and looked at my messages. Margaret wrote, Dad said he saw you today. He's moving out. I'm glad. I think he'll be better off alone. I smiled and replied, I think so, too. I put my phone away, put the groceries on the shelves, and made some tea. I sat on the sofa, looking out the window. The city twinkled with lights, street lamps, windows in the houses across the street, car headlights on the road. The spring evening was warm, soft, calm. I thought about what had happened, about the family that had fallen apart, about my mother, who was still there, in that house, clinging to her resentment and anger, about my father, who had finally found the courage to leave, about Lawrence, who had chosen comfort over truth and was now living with the consequences of that choice, about Margaret, who is perhaps the only one who truly understood what happened and who is learning to live differently. Do I regret it? No. Do I feel guilty? A little. But more than that, I feel relief. The revenge turned out to be too great. I just wanted to show them that I would no longer tolerate it, that I won't sit quietly when they leave me, forget me, ignore me. But instead, I destroyed my family. I exposed my mother, forced my father to open his eyes, broke ties that had lasted for years. But was there an alternative? Could I have just continued living in that house, enduring neglect, pretending that everything was fine? No, I would have broken down. I would have lost myself. And now I was living. Really living. In my own apartment, with my own rules, without anyone pressuring me or dictating how I should be. I worked, met people, I chose myself, did what I wanted. For the first time in 29 years, I felt free. And that was enough. My phone vibrated, a message from Dean Verberg. Clara, sorry to bother you again. I just wanted to ask, have you thought about my offer? About working together on a startup? I stared at the message for a minute, thinking. A new project, new people, new opportunities. Was I ready for this? Maybe yes. Maybe it was time to try something new. Something that wasn't connected to my family, my past, the girl I used to be. I typed my reply. Yes, let's give it a try. When can we meet? I sent it and put my phone away. I smiled. Life goes on. Even after the storm, even after the ruins, even after everything that happened. I got up, walked to the window, and looked at the city. Somewhere out there, in that house with black walls and Gothic candlesticks, my mother lived. She was still angry, still hated me, still couldn't understand that she had lost. Somewhere out there was Lawrence trying to pick up the pieces of his life. Somewhere out there was Margaret dreaming of escape. And I was here, in my apartment, in my life, free. My phone vibrated again. Dean. Great. How about tomorrow? There's a coffee shop on Oak Street, a nice place. Would 2 o'clock work? I replied. That works. See you then. I put down the phone and looked out the window again. Spring, new beginnings, new opportunities. Maybe the revenge was too much. Maybe I destroyed more than I planned to. But I had no regrets. Because for the first time in my life, I was living the way I wanted to. Not by someone else's rules. Not under someone else's pressure. Just living. And that was enough. I went back to the sofa, picked up my cup of tea, and took a sip. Warm, sweet, soothing. Outside the window, the city continued to live. Cars drove by, people went home, lights flickered, and I sat here in my little world and felt calm. For the first time in many years, real calm. The phone vibrated one last time. Margaret. Good night, Clara. Thank you for being there. So yeah, I smiled and replied, good night, take care. I put down my phone, closed my eyes, and allowed myself to just be. Just breathe. Just exist. The storm was over. The ruins were behind me. Something new lay ahead. Something I didn't know yet, but I was ready. And that was enough.